Hello. Today we are doing lesson 7.4, multiply fractions. I'm on page 439 if you have your workbook. Okay, so go ahead and open up to page 439. And our essential question is, how can you use an area model to show the product of two fractions? So today we're going to be using a model to multiply two fractions together. Last time we did a fraction times a whole number multiplication. Now we're moving on to fraction times fraction. But again, we're using a model today. So flip over, skip through this page, flip over to page 440. And let's take a look at the problem that says make connections. So you can find a part of a part in different ways. Marguerite and James both correctly solve the problem 1/3 times 3/4 using the steps shown. So we're going to show how, we'll start with Marguerite. So again, 1/3 times 3/4 is the same as taking 1/3 of 3/4. We're taking 1/3 of 3/4. So Marguerite drew a model with 4 parts. So when we have 1/3 times 3/4, we're going to be using the denominators in terms of how we're going to set up our fraction. Okay, so our denominator of 4 is telling us that we need to set up a model into 4 parts. This is the total number of parts. Okay, so they did that for us. The book did that for us. Now we're going to look at how many 1/4 pieces did we shade. We want to shade the model to show 3/4. So first of all, let's take our pencil. We're going to shade the model to show 3/4, which we should know really well. So how many 1/4 pieces did you shade? Blank 1/4 pieces. So we shaded 3. Okay, if we count those, 1, 2, 3 of the 1/4 pieces. 1, 2, 3. So to find 1/3 of the 3/4, we're going to circle 1/3 of 3 of the pieces. So 1/3 of the 3 pieces that we just shaded, we're going to circle. So we're looking right here. What part of the whole 1/3? So we're not looking at the whole part of 4th. The whole model is sectioned off into 4ths, but our whole that we're looking at is 3/4. So of the 3/4 that we shaded, we want 1/3 of the 3/4. So not the whole model, just of the part that we shaded. So what is 1/3 of the part that we shaded? That's going to be 1/4 of the whole model. Okay, so now we're going back to the whole model. So 1/4 of the whole model is shaded. So 1/3 times 3/4 is, well, we know it's going to be 1/4, but what we want to do here, just like we did with whole number fractions, I'm just going to show you really quick. So again, we would multiply our numerators. 1 times 3 is 3. And then our denominators, 3 times 4 is 12. And if you look at that, you should be able to know that, okay, this is not in simplest form because I can divide both of these numbers by 3. So I'm giving you a little glimpse of what we're going to be doing tomorrow. But this is the way that you can check it. Okay, right here. Okay, so let's skip down and try, we're going to skip James because it's the same kind of idea. Now we're going to go back down, let's go down to the share and show and look at number 1. Okay, so again, we're using a model. Now they're showing us, when we do our models, we use shading, and we've done in the classroom light shading and dark shading, or we use 2 different colored pencils. Okay, so one thing I want to mention here is remember that when we're shading columns and rows. Okay, so these are columns, our rows are side to side, and our columns, remember, are up and down. Okay, so these are our columns, these are our rows. We're going to use our denominators to show us the total number. If we were to, they drew this out for us, but we're going to do it again. So 1/3, we looking at our denominators, is going to represent, the 3 is going to represent our columns, and the 5 is going to represent our rows. So that's how we ended up with 3 columns, 1, 2, 3 columns, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Okay? So of those 5 or 3 columns, we're looking at, we want 3/5 of the 1/3. So we're going to shade, start with the columns, 1/3 of the column, and they did this for us, but we're going to redo it because they did a little bit different. We usually shade all the way down to represent. Okay, so I want you to do that too. So right now we're showing 1/3, 1 out of the 3 columns, we're going to shade it. The next thing that we're going to do is shade 3/5 of our 5 rows. Okay, so we can either shade darker with our pencil, or you can use a different color. For right now, I'm just going to go over it darker. So out of our 5 rows, we want 3. So I'm going to go across now because my rows are across, and I'm going to darken 3/5 of my rows. Okay, and then what we're going to do, if you remember, we're going to look for the part that's shaded twice, double shaded, the overlap. So how many out of the whole are double shaded? We have 3 that are shaded out of the total 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 out of the total 15. But if we look at that, oh, well, I know that I can simplify 3/15, so I can divide both of these by 3 and end up with 1/5. Okay, so how we would look at that is we could say, well, looking at our columns and rows, I have 1, if we were looking at the whole thing, 1 out of the 5 rows is shaded. Okay, so again, we're just simplifying. Okay, so it's easier to see with this model that 3 out of the 15 total are shaded, and then just simplify. Okay, so again, we're looking at columns and rows, and we want to make sure that we're looking for the overlap. The book does a little bit different from what we did and how we did it in class. So I'm just going to go with being consistent in how we do it in class, how we shade, and looking for those overlaps. Okay? All right, now they're using a circle, back to a circle model again. Okay, so again, we're looking at the denominator is showing our total part. Okay, so we have a circle, we split it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts, and we want to circle 2/3 of the 5 parts. So we're going to circle 2 of the 5 parts. So 2 of these 5 parts, or 2 of the parts that we shaded, are going to be 2 out of the total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the total 5ths. Okay? I'm not going to ask you to draw a circle because it's a little bit different. And again, this is a strategy that you can use. Okay? I'm going to show you the multiplication tomorrow in tomorrow's lesson, how to multiply. This is just showing you visually what you're doing, okay? What would this look like if we were to take 2/3 times 3/5? We would do the same as we did in lesson 7.3. We would multiply the numerators and then the denominators. So 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 5 is 15, and then we know that we can simplify if we divide both of these by 3, and we get 2/5, which is the same as we get here with our model. Okay, so that's a little preview of what's coming up. Okay, but I don't want you to do that right now. Today we're just doing the models, but I'm just showing you that that's the way that you can start to check your answer with your model. Okay? All right, I'm going to stop right there and move on to some more share and show problems on the next slide. So stay tuned.